All right, and we're back with another Saturday college football preview from the Unwrapped Sports Network. I'm myself, MBF underscore Trill. I've got my man Michael Lawson with me, Mike, and I've got my man Garrett from Iowa. Garrett, how we doing today?
Oh, we're doing great. It's a Saturday with college football, so let's go.
Exactly. We're just gonna jump right onto our sponsors really quick. We've got our Unwrapped shop up right now, and for today, we've got a 15% promo code off right now, and that word is support. So that 15% code is going to work for today. We've also got mybookie.ag, which is the best place to gamble on sports, casino, and everything more. We've even got a promo code for that, USN100, to double your first deposit as well, and the extra $15 bonus. And lastly, RX Hemp, we can't forget about that. They've got great products. And of course, we got another promo code with them, RX Hemp USN, for 10% off their products as well. But other than that, we're just going to jump right into it with our college football Saturday and another one. How do we feel about those games last week? I'll start Coastal Carolina BYU. That was really the only thing I watched. How about you guys?
Yeah, I didn't catch the game, but I was really excited to see it happening. I kept an eye on the score. I just thought it really showed some good flexibility, and especially I'm a Big Ten guy. Just something that the Big Ten has really lacked this year is flexibility to work with the COVID situation, and it was just really impressive seeing them pull together that game on short notice, and it was a really good game. Coastal Carolina is getting disrespected in the rankings, I believe, especially after beating BYU. But yeah, it was a really fun game to watch. I've been trying to keep my eye on that quarterback from BYU for NFL reasons, but he's had a solid game. And overall, I was just really happy to see him pull together a ranked game like that and give the fans what they wanted to see. It was the highest rated football game ever to play on ESPNU. So I think that tells you where we're at. Need some more games like that.
I definitely agree. Mike?
Yeah, I was really entertained. I didn't get to keep my eye on it constantly, but I was definitely back and forth with it with my three kids running around. But yeah, definitely looking at the ranking, they only have one at 13. I hadn't paid attention to that yet. I do feel like that is undeserving. I feel like they need to be in the top 10 by now. And I know it's a small school. We don't really know if this is legit or if it's kind of the teams that they're playing, but BYU is legit. And after a win like that, I think they deserve to be in the top 10. Uh, I was happy that Kentucky won. I was really surprised by that. I was a Debbie Downer on them on her show last week, thinking that it was completely over. But definitely happy with the outcome on that one. So anytime Kentucky wins, it's a wonderful day.
All right, and that's just going to lead us right into our topics for today. We're going to start right off with, to me, the most important thing, our Heisman front runners for today. Zach Wilson, we just highlighted. Of course, we know Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Cal Trask, in everyone else's eyes. How is your top three at least shaping out at this point?
I think it's Trask at this point. It's his to lose. He has been pretty consistent all year. The team's probably the ranked the highest. I haven't paid attention again, like I said a second ago, but Florida's definitely looked the best. I do think Alabama's Jones has a good potential on that, but I do think it's Trask right now. Uh, I think the other ones, it's going to be one of those situations where they're just not too big of a school yet, so the BYU and so on. But that's just my opinion. I think Trask will have it hands down on this one.
Yeah. I like Mac Jones to win it just because I think Alabama is going to beat the shit out of Florida in the championship game. I don't. Alabama has been, and I really dislike the SEC just mainly because ESPN loves them so much. But Alabama, I mean, you can't argue with facts, and Alabama has been hands down the best football team on the field this year. I mean, I like where Trask is right now, but I think after he gets beat down by Bama, it's really going to drop his stock. I think Williams from BYU gets in the discussion, but it's kind of like the MVP discussion in the NFL. You got guys that deserve to be in the discussion and guys that are, and then you got Mahomes who is going to win it hands down. I think we're kind of the same way there. I mean, Trask deserves to be in it. Williams deserves to be in it. Fields is kind of fallen off through no fault of his own, but just he hasn't played. So
Exactly.
I really think Mac Jones runs away with it, with Trask and Williams being 2 and 3 respectively.
Understandable, understandable. And honestly, I can't disagree too much. I think it all comes down to that Florida versus Alabama game at the end of the day. Whoever wins that game is going to be your Heisman Trophy winner, I feel, at the end of the day. If Kyle Trask can somehow pull a miracle and beats Alabama, you got to give him the trophy, and Florida has to be in the playoffs. And vice versa. If Mac Jones and Alabama throttle Florida, you have to give him that award because, face it, I don't think we've ever seen an Alabama quarterback play this good.
No.
Exactly. And I'm like, we've seen Tua, we've seen Jalen Hurts, and they've had success, but not to this level of Mac Jones.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you were spot on there. If Florida beats Alabama to take that playoff spot, then yeah, Trask is automatically the winner. I just don't see it happening.
I think Alabama wins the game for sure, but I think Trask, if he plays good, it gives him a good chance to contend for that. I really do. If you think of any Alabama team, it doesn't matter how good the quarterback play is; it's still running back team. I think that hurts Jones just a tad bit, but Jones has played wonderful. I mean, I can't say anything bad about his play. I just feel like when you think of Florida, you think of Trask. When you think of Alabama, you're thinking of so many other athletes as well. So that's why I give him the upper hand. But kind of like Garrett said earlier, there's people that are in the race that deserves it, and there's people that are going to win it.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us right into our next topic of, do you guys really feel like COVID has affected the season to the point where we wouldn't expect to see these top teams, or ultimately did we expect Alabama, Florida, Clemson, Ohio State to be your top of the tops at the end of the day, no matter COVID or not?
I don't think it's affected the top teams too much. I mean, you can point at some teams that's obviously had an effect on, like LSU is probably the one that pops to mind right away. COVID's definitely affected them. And then I don't think we've seen underperformance. I just think we've seen a lack of the opportunity to showcase teams. I think if we had non-conference games to start the year like we normally did, we might be having a completely different playoff conversation depending on what happened with like Ohio State playing non-conference teams and actually having a full 12-game season. I think Alabama and Notre Dame are still at the top because I don't think it matters who they play. They're going to do good. So, but there's a couple of the other teams, especially when you get down to like the 5 through 10 spot, that I think playing non-conference games would have definitely helped them.
I think Ohio State can't be in the champion or in the playoff now. That's my opinion. They're only going to be playing like 4 or 5 games. They may be able to play the conference championship. Don't even know how really that's going to go. So I will say I think it's affected some situations, but like in the SEC, I don't really feel like it's affected that much. We were going to play no matter what because we need that money. Let's just be honest. The SEC, that is, not Kentucky. We'll play because we want to try to win. But so I feel like I don't want to say anything that might sound hindrance in a way, but I feel like if it was more sensitive to other conferences, it definitely affected them. I feel like the SEC just didn't really care much about the COVID. We were going to play no matter what, so it didn't affect us. Big Ten, I mean, heck, they maybe played 5 games all season. But yet,
Fire Kevin Warren.
So
okay, well, that kind of like I had this thought. Do you think it was the Big Ten handling the situation poorly, or were they just the most sensitive to the situation here?
I think they did. I think Warren has done a terrible job from the get-go. And whether he was right or wrong, public perception-wise, he has just done horrible. He canceled the season and said it was unsafe for kids to play football while his kid was at Mississippi playing football. I mean, you can't do that. That's just
right.
That's a terrible look. And he, rumor-wise, I mean, nothing on this is official because you can't get official reports. But rumor-wise, was it that the Big Ten was four teams, 4 playing, 4 teams against, and 6 in the middle. And Kevin Warren pulled out this medical report that he got from somewhere that football players would have heart problems if they caught COVID. and beat it and just got on the phone and beat these other 6 teams over the head with it until they all agreed that they should cancel the season. And 2 days after they canceled the season, like 8 other universities came out and said that report was made up and had no basis in fact. I mean, it's just he's been handling it terrible. The whole letting Ohio State back in. It was the right decision, and they're going to get in the playoff as long as they beat Northwestern. They have a guaranteed spot as long as they don't lose to Northwestern. A 6-0 Ohio State Big Ten championship team will be in the playoff. They aren't going to get the committee is not going to leave them off. But
I think they're in too. I don't think they deserve it, but that's me.
There's 2 different. Which way do you want me to argue here? Do you want me to argue with what the playoff committee is going to do, or what should happen? Because those are 2 very different things.
Right.
But he came out at the beginning of the year talking about, these are not paid athletes. The safety of the team and competitive fairness is the number one thing that we are concerned about. And then Ohio State did not hit the minimum number of games. And Kevin Warren took one look at the Big Ten bank account and said, well, all that stuff I said before doesn't matter. We need Ohio State in the football playoff because we need our money. And, right or wrong, that's what it is. It's a money play. And it basically throws out everything that he's been saying all year about player safety and competitive fairness out the window. And it's one of those things. You can be right while being wrong. And right, Ohio State should be playing in the Big Ten championship, but his reasoning is all wrong, and he looks terrible.
My opinion on it, I 100% think that the Big Ten handled it great. Now, here's my reason. As an SEC team, Kentucky team, mid-major or mid of the conference there, I was happy for this, for the fact that I thought a lot of these players saying, you know what, we want to play, you can cancel your season. We're going straight to portal. We're getting traded or getting transferred right away and going to go to the SEC. And what better team than go to Kentucky? Because I was thinking Ohio State, these players that are top of the line, they ain't going to go to Alabama because they're already stacked. You're thinking scholarships, who's going to get what? You're going to have to go to a different team. And we would have been a good team that would have been a good face that has a chance to prove where a 5-star could just come in and take over right away. So I was happy the way they held it. I do think that they realized, hey, these players may actually leave, may transfer right away, and they get the extra year of eligibility. I think they said, okay, never mind. We've got to have this before we lose all of our players. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
I mean, I just didn't know the reasoning behind the commissioner's decision making. I mean, we all heard about how teams were lobbying. So many were on the fence, as you mentioned before, Garrett. And the fact that basically, as you said, that report came out as BS 2 days later. And it's like, at this point, of course, everyone's happy because ultimately we got football played. But looking at how they handled it versus every other conference, it's like, it's obviously not the best, but you can say that there's room for improvement on everyone. Because face it, if you weren't a Division I school this year, you probably didn't play college football. And we know there are over 200 other Division I AA, Division II, Division III, and so on. So a lot of kids were affected ultimately. But that kind of transitions to the next one as well. Do coaches have a grace period year with this COVID year, or do you think coaches like James Franklin, Jim Harbaugh, people of that nature deserve to be on the hot seat right now?
To me, it's situational. Like we talked about last week, Trill, about Tennessee and how a lot of their fans are really saying this guy needs to go. I think he deserves a grace period for this. I mean, everything went crazy for him, but you can actually see some of the controversials going on that it must be something bigger than just this COVID going on, because they've had so many people decommit. They've had some even just opt out now. So there's something going on in that locker room. Even their kicker that I talked to you about last week, how the coach was backing his quarterback and saying, well, he didn't miss a kick. Well, that kicker has now opted out and verbally said, due to turmoil in the organization, I'm opting out as well. So there's something going on there. I think Pruitt probably won't make it to past Vandy if they lose to Vandy right away. But I think Harbaugh, another one, he needs, if underperforms at the end of the year, he needs to be gone as well, because this is not a one-year thing for him, because Michigan has for years now been a good team but can't get past Ohio State, and Michigan is expected to be in that game. Now, for other teams that are struggling, like I'll even say Kentucky, I think we've won 3 games this season. We knew going in that we didn't have our non-conference games, that our record was going to be low. So I think Stoops in this situation would have that grace. So it's kind of situational. If they were coming into the season questionable about hot seat, I think they deserve to be on that hot seat. But if it's just a bum or a bailed year here or just a fail on that, then I think you should say, okay, it's just a grace. We understand the different things going on. The players are so confused mentally of what's going on with this. Is it completely dangerous to even be out here? Do you even shake a hand? Mom and dad, what am I supposed to do? I'm moved away from home right now. What are we doing? I feel like that takes a big effect. Now, granted, we need to grow up and be a little bit of more men and try to handle our stuff on that. But so I feel like there's a grace period for certain people and not a grace period for others.
Ultimately, I don't disagree at all, just because I feel like you can look at Coach O and look at last year, you're in the national championship game. This year, you are 3-5 right now, and you're 23-point dog to Florida. So it's like you see these different things from years past, and it's like, is it an anomaly or is it a bad season? And it's showing that maybe you need to move in a different direction. Garrett, how do you feel about that?
I think it varies from team to team. You look at James Franklin at Penn State. I think he's fine because he lost like 4 of his top defensive players, opted out because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they were expected to contend with Ohio State for the East, and they started off the year 0-5. It's not good, but he lost a lot of players. It's kind of an anomaly year for him. Penn State has generally been good, if not the top of the East. They've been competed every year. So I think his seat is fine. You look at Ed Orgeron. I don't really know what they're going to do there because he is probably the most loved person in the state of Louisiana. And I think that guy could go 1-10 and people are still going to love Coach O. So, but Louisiana, LSU has a lot of problems off the field that are just kind of coming to light with the lack of success on the field. Right or wrong, that's how it works. So it's going to be interesting to see what LSU does. They have voluntarily opted out of bowl games this year because, safety reasons, not because they're 3-5. So I thought that was interesting. But then you go the other way and you look at like Jim Harbaugh. His seat's hot, and it does COVID or no COVID, he's hot. I mean, the guy's like 1-15 against top 10 teams. He can't beat Ohio State. He's at Michigan, who is supposed to be this perennial contender every year, and they haven't even sniffed the playoffs in the entire time he's been there. So I think it's less of a COVID thing there. I don't think he gets a pass on the season like James Franklin does at Penn State because he's been bad. And he can't win big games.
His seat was hot when he came in.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you really got to look at it on a team-to-team basis because there's teams where you can look at it and be like, yeah, okay, they definitely, COVID affected them more than the other teams. They had players opt out, and you can't really put this on the coach. And then there's other teams, especially I think Michigan's the number one example for everybody. His seat's hot. And regardless of whether or not we had COVID this year, if he didn't win this year, he was going to be in trouble. And the COVID situation, I don't think changes that for him.
Interesting, because I'm looking at it from my perspective with my FSU team, Mike Norvell being a first-year coach. It was turmoil from the moment he signed his contract. Kids really didn't like him. We had players opt out, opt back in, just to opt back out weeks later after playing maybe a handful of games. You've got kids decommitting like Tennessee. Then you also have top commits coming in. So I really don't know what's going on at FSU. All I do know is that they're obviously going to give Norvell at least another year, like they gave Taggart after that first horrible year. But I hope he understands it's only a 2-year window at Florida State. We're used to greatness. We went from Bobby Bowden to Jimbo Fisher. So at this point, if you can't give us the greatness or at least take us in that direction like those coaches, FSU is all about pride, alumni, prodigy. You're going to lose your job at the end of the day. So although it's a year one coach, I feel like he's not as much on the hot seat, but he needs to be aware that you need to win next season. It's just that simple. But
do you think he gets 3 years instead of 2 because of just everything going on with this season?
I mean, personally, from a fan, I would want him to get 3 because you had COVID. You're still dealing with Jimbo Fisher's recruiting class. You're just trying to get in your own recruits. You're bringing in transfers, everything of that nature. So I feel like he would deserve more time. But FSU boosters and alumni, like I said, I don't know if they have that patience. And at the end of the day, money talks, and you can always be bought out of a contract. So if the right guy becomes available, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Norvell's gone come next season.
That's fair.
That leads us right on to our first preview of today's game. I think this is the easiest one to call for them all. We've got Bama versus Arkansas. I think the only interesting fact is that it's a noon kickoff. Bama comes in as a 32-point favorite. Do they cover is the real question here.
Arkansas with the upset. No, I'm playing. I do think Arkansas will play good. Anytime you play Alabama, you're going to be playing your best. It's like, sorry, guys, when you play Kentucky in basketball, you get the best from them. That's like a big game for them. So this is the Alabama for them. And I think Arkansas is going to come in and really play well with them for the first half. But I think the second half, that Alabama starts pulling away. I do think Arkansas keeps it under the 32. But I'm not going to say it's going to be too far away from the 32. I could see it easily being a 28-point difference.
Yeah, I don't see Arkansas winning this game any way, shape, or form. Alabama is negative 6,000 on my bookie for the money line. It's just ridiculous odds there. I'm kind of surprised that the overs at 68.5. I don't see Alabama scoring 70 points in this game, and that's about the only way you're going to get to the over. That's where it is. Alabama's just going to walk all over them. I like Arkansas to cover just because I think Alabama will really just slow it down in the second half and grind the clock, just eat clocks. So probably jump out to like a 3 or 4 touchdown lead in the first half and then just grind it out the rest of the way.
I want to ask a quick question, if you don't care on that. With Alabama in that situation, grinding out the clock like that, and that's what they do on most games because it's outrageous anyways. Do you think that hurts Jones any in the Heisman votes as far as that?
I think he's going to have to screw up for it to hurt him. Like if he comes out and throws a couple of picks or something like that, that would hurt him. But like I said, if they get their 3 or 4 touchdown lead in the first half and then just go to the run game in the second half, the Heisman people just ain't even going to look at the second half.
Right.
They're just going to look at what he did in the first half when it was still a game.
Right.
Totally agree. I think that Alabama simply just, as you said, jumps out to an early lead, and it's going to be the Najee Harris show in the second half. Just hand it off to another 6'2", 230-pound running back, and let him run over other kids. So I don't think they cover. I think Arkansas beats the spread just because Alabama's thinking more about the future at this point. You know that you're locked into that game versus Florida. You don't want any injuries, anything of that nature.
Right.
Once you get this 3 or 4 touchdown lead, I expect Devontae Smith, Mac Jones, even Najee Harris to be off the field because you don't need all those starters out there at the end of the day. That's just an injury waiting to happen.
Does Najee Harris rip off 200-plus yards and put himself in the Heisman conversation?
I think he deserves to be in there, honestly. He's the 5th person, I think, over Travis Etienne, in my opinion.
I was like, you put up a 200-yard game, you're front and center on that talk again.
I'm like, statistically, if I'm not wrong, he's put together a very similar season, if not a little better than Derrick Henry's Heisman season. And compared to Mark Ingram's season as well. Looking at our next game, like I said, to me, I'm rooting for Missouri in this one. Georgia versus Missouri, 9th ranked Georgia, 25th ranked Missouri. Missouri's 5-3. Everyone looked at them beating LSU earlier in the year as a big game. Now we see what LSU is, and it's not viewed as much in the same way. And Georgia might have found their quarterback in JT Daniels. Coming in as a 13.5-point favorite. What's your guys' thoughts?
Georgia walks all over them. You look at Missouri's overrated, even at the bottom of the top 25. And like you said, the LSU game was a big deal when it happened. But looking at where LSU is now, that's not really a signature win. Missouri points per game scored, they're at 27.6. They're ranked 74th out of 127 teams. And then their defense is allowing 27.9 to be ranked 59th out of 127 teams. And you look at their schedule, like who they played. LSU was 17 at the time, and they beat them by 4 points. And we've all seen what LSU has shown themselves to be over the season. That's not an impressive win to beat LSU by 4 points. They played Alabama, got stomped 38-19. Tennessee, it stomped them 35-12 points. They beat South Carolina by 7. They only beat Arkansas by 2 in a shootout, and it's Arkansas. Their only big win was Vanderbilt.
Can you hear him, or is it me?
I think he might have just cut out. I'm like, I heard
Okay.
Vandy, I think.
Okay. Well, I will pick up until he comes back. I at first, he's gone. I at first wanted to, when I'm looking at the season performance and everything, comparing them, I'm thinking that Missouri has a chance. But yeah, hearing some of the stats as far as the offense and defense, and even looking back at some of the games that they played, like you said, Georgia, I think, has found their quarterback, and I think Georgia will definitely be just soaring on this. The only thing that I would be worried about is it is at Missouri. Missouri has a pretty good record at home. They're 4-1 this year, and Georgia may be looking past them just a tad bit, looking for the next game. So I don't know how that's going because in my eye, I think, let me check real quick. I feel like, everyone is assuming – okay, yeah, there is one more week. Kentucky's done, so I'm kind of confused on who's playing what left. But Georgia, I think, is thinking if we don't blow them out, we're hurting ourselves as far as for bowl games now. They've got to try to pass up Florida in some way, form, or fashion. And so I think that they may just come out and roll over them and try to beat them as bad as they can just to get their recognition up higher, get a higher bowl. Obviously, I don't think they can take over Florida unless they just lose. But to get a higher ranking bowl, Georgia now is thinking, hey, blow every team out, get our guys the stats that they need to get on the national television. So that's my opinion. I think they have to blow them out, and they want to blow them out.
That's got to be the game plan today. My only thing with Georgia is I was so ready to be a fan, and granted, it was with another quarterback, but they very much disappointed me, and I think their most serious game so far of the year, which was that Florida game, the world's largest cocktail party. And I feel like they basically wet the bed and just didn't show up in the second half.
Yeah.
It was nice and competitive, first half, all the energy came out, but that second half, Florida really showed that they have NFL talent across the board at multiple positions, whether it's receiver, tight end, it doesn't matter because even quarterback, they're making it happen. And Georgia, to me, I want to believe, especially as a 13.5-point favorite on the road. But as we mentioned, Missouri's 4-1 at home. Obviously, they don't win pretty. I'll take them to beat the spread. Beat the spread today. They won't get beat by more than 13.5 points. Georgia's going to win, but they won't get embarrassed. Garrett?
Yeah, I don't know how much of it got before my internet went crazy there, but I think Georgia beats the spread handily because Missouri just hasn't really showed up in even against average teams. They're barely winning. the only team they really put a beat down on was Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt. So I don't really expect them to do a whole lot against this very talent-heavy Florida team.
Looking back, their defense gives up a lot of points. The only game that they didn't give up a lot of points was Vandy, and it's Vandy. Of course, South Carolina 10, but again, Kentucky just beat them. So, but other than that, I mean, Florida puts up 40 on them. Kentucky did 10, and it was early season, and we looked horrible on offense. We still do. But LSU, who's been struggling, gave up 40 or put up 41. Tennessee, who is struggling horrible now, gave up or put up 35 on them. So I definitely think Georgia has a chance to beat the spread on this, beat them by a couple touchdowns, if not 3. Again, like I said before, I heard the stats. I was like, well, Missouri's definitely going to cover on this. I think it'll be a close game. But I mean, the way Georgia looked last week with a new quarterback focusing on them, I just think it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to go with the spread pick, like I said, just because when Garrett pointed out those defensive stats, it was like,
oh yeah,
they're giving up more points than they're scoring. I really don't know how this team is 5-3 at this point.
Yeah.
So
and that was me coming into it because I hadn't really watched a whole lot of Missouri, and I'm like, man, I got to dig into this game a little bit before I get on the stream. And I started looking at their schedule and their wins and their point standings, and it's like, how is this team 5-3? They just the numbers don't back it up.
I think if you take out the Vandy Missouri game, that is going to be the difference maker on those stats. I mean, 41-0. I mean, you take that out of the equation, I bet you they look like they're giving up tons of more points.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably put their points. Yeah, I mean, their points allowed would jump a 10 points on the average there if they didn't have the shutout against Vandy.
Mm-hmm. Plus the 41 they put up against Vandy, so that would even make their offense even go down.
Yep.
To me, that leads right into the weirdest game of the day, at least record-wise and eyeball test to me. Colorado, 21st ranked Colorado, who is 4-0, comes in as a home underdog to a 1-2 Utah team. Let me hear everyone's thoughts on this.
My thought is there's something we don't know that's going on. Is someone not playing? I mean, what is going on with that?
I think the Pac-12 has a lot of similarities to the NFC East this year, where any given game is a coin flip. Like you don't know what team's going to show up, and I refuse to bet any game involving the NFC East, and about the same way with the Pac-12. The only game I bet in the Pac-12 this year was Oregon State, and you all saw what happened there. Cost me a 14 parlay on that one.
Oh gosh.
Damn. But to me, it's just very, very weird. Like we've all mentioned, like 4-0 home dogs. There's got to be something more up. Colorado's played more games this year. Utah has lost. They've lost an NFL quarterback last year. NFL talent across the board. Tyler Huntley, Zach Moss. The list goes on. So the fact that Utah is somehow still favored on the road, I've got to roll with them today just because either Vegas knows something, Utah knows something, but someone knows something that I don't about this Utah team.
I mean, the great thing is Utah is on a win streak right now of 1. So maybe that's it. They've got the momentum of winning a game. So I don't know. But even covering the spread, Colorado is 4-0. They're 4-0 on the season. They're 2-0 at home. So Colorado's got to be the better team here, right? So who has Colorado even played? Do it. Let's see.
Yeah, well, that's what you got.
Arizona, San Diego State, and Stanford. So I mean, Stanford game was close, and I mean, really, that's it. So who's Utah played that they've lost to?
Well, let's see. They lost to number 15 USC by a lot, and then Washington by 3. And they beat Oregon State, who did beat Oregon.
Right.
Maybe that's the reasoning. They beat the team that beat Oregon, so they got to be good.
Right. Well, I mean,
that's the type of logic that they have. I just think, not to cut you off, I just think the Pac-12 is just, they're contenders. It's full of pretenders and pretenders and pretenders, whether it's Oregon, whether it's USC, whether it's Utah, Colorado. If they had to go play even of the middle of the pack teams in the ACC, SEC, Big Ten, I think they would be exposed. And I think that's probably what these voters or the rankings are seeing, because they're not bad teams and some don't have losses. But at the same time, I don't see a USC, even a Colorado, anyone of that nature somehow ending up in the playoffs, even if everything goes to hell.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right there. I think the Pac-12's only chance to get even a look at the playoffs was if Oregon ran the table. And they lost to Oregon State. They're out. And I mean, and as far as you said, playing middle of the pack, I mean, you even look at last year, which, I mean, the playoff committee can say all they want about how they look at this season. You know that previous seasons factor into it. You know, you had a very good USC team had to play a middle of the pack in the Big Ten Iowa team. And Iowa went up there and was up 2 scores at halftime and never looked back, just embarrassed them. And USC was supposed to be a top-tier Pac-12 team, and I think Iowa was like 5th in the Big Ten last year, and they just – I mean, they buy a little bit of Iowa bias here, not going to lie, but still, you can't lie. They went in there and embarrassed them in the bowl game last year.
That definitely says a lot.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know you like Iowa. That's a joke, obviously. Come on, guys.
I was like,
Really?
I couldn't wear my Unwrapped sweatshirt because the stupid thing is so comfortable. My wife has appropriated it. So
Gotcha. Understand. But as far as picking, I mean, I like to pick underdogs in all situations. But would Colorado be the underdog?
Vegas says
technically,
so.
Exactly. Technically, they're the underdog.
So,
Home dog is that. I'm
going to go with Colorado in this game. And I'm going to say they cover the spread.
Yeah, I think I'm going to hop right on this boat with you, because I think this is the easiest one to pick. Colorado beats that 1-point spread. And that leads us right into teams we just discussed: UCLA, USC. USC only enters as a 3.5-point favorite. Coming in as a 1-loss team, 15th ranked USC. I think that they have a great offensive team, don't get me wrong, but they just had a top linebacker opt out. I don't think USC's defense has been up to par of the past years. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson for UCLA is not a bad quarterback at all. I expect him to give USC some trouble today. I'm leaning with UCLA to not only beat the spread, but beat USC and pull off the upset today.
I would agree with you. UCLA always seems to play them pretty tough. It doesn't matter what their season does, but I feel like this is just that rivalry game that they want to play their best and just solidify their name as the team in California. Looking through some of the games, I mean, they played even Oregon pretty tough, destroyed, but beat Arizona, beat Cal by 20-some points, and lost to Colorado. How about that? But so I do think this is the game that UCLA says, hey, we're the real deal as far as on the Carolina team. So, yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. UCLA in the win on this one.
Yeah, I definitely like that pick. I mean, just look at what UCLA has done. I mean, even when they lost to Colorado, put up 42 points. Mm-hmm. They lost to Oregon, but they put up 35, and those were both one-possession games. And even the games they ran away with, Arizona and Arizona State, they put up 27 and 25. So they got an offense that could score. So I like their odds in a shootout, which I think it's going to kind of be. Definitely going to be on the offenses here rather than the defenses. And UCLA has shown that they can put up points. So they just got to go out there and outscore USC, and I think they can.
No doubt. To me, the game of the day, although it's a 3:30 game today, one of the only matchups between ranked teams that matter: versus North Carolina, De'Aaron King versus Sam Howell, 2 high-powered offenses. We've got Manny Diaz versus Mac Brown. However you want to look at it. How do you guys feel?
I'll let you go first, Garrett.
Of course you would.
Okay.
It's a
Well,
hard game to call.
I'll just do this. This is me today. I'm
I,
going with
I,
the U.
I don't know that I would bet the rent check on it or anything, but I
Right.
kind of like UNC here. I mean, Miami's been good, but I'm playing ranked teams. Playing Clemson, they got beat 42-17, which granted that's Clemson and they're above and beyond everybody else.
Mhm.
But then even when they played NC State, they only won 44-41, and UNC can score points.
Mhm.
So I kind of like UNC to pull the upset here. Miami won 48-0 versus Duke, but I mean, I'm pretty sure Duke just, they give people football scholarships with the leftover money from their basketball program. So I don't know how much stock you could put in that one, but no, I
What was
kind of
the
like
score in the
UNC
Duke game?
here. I mean, Miami's good. Don't get me wrong, but they don't really have a dominating win over a ranked team. I think UNC could come in here and make a game out of it.
The way I look at it, I mean, for sure, the most solid thing I know about this game is the over is going to hit. I know these are two very high-powered offenses, and I've seen North Carolina give up 30 plus to FSU, who doesn't have a quarterback. And like you just mentioned, we've seen Miami give up 41 to NC State and get into a shootout with them. With that being said, over for sure. From a pure quarterback standpoint, I'm taking Sam Howell every day over De'Aaron King, and it's no bias. It's just he's a better pure thrower of the football. De'Aaron King's a way better athlete. We know Swiss Army knife, all of those great things. But at the end of the day, Sam Howell can probably go to the NFL next year if he wanted to. So I'm going to lean with Mac Brown and Sam Howell coming down to Miami to pull off this upset. I think it's going to be easily, like we said, game of the day. And if not, to me, this could possibly propel somebody into a huge bowl game, because if North Carolina comes out here and blows out Miami, we know that Clemson and Notre Dame have to play each other again. And ultimately, one of those teams will fall. So this would put that team right into the Orange Bowl game, most likely, or at least a nice New Year's Six game. So I think these teams will be taking this game seriously, to say the least.
Yeah. One more fun little fact is Miami beat UNC by 3. NC State by 3, and then UNC beat NC State by 27.
Yes, but also look at the Florida State game. I think Florida State actually beat North Carolina, and then Miami destroyed Florida State, because that's actually what I was looking at. So, my heart wants to say Miami all the way, but just looking at what schedule and what performance the North Carolina has done, North Carolina has proven themselves more. But how can you go against Miami, man? It's Miami. I do think this is a big game, a bigger game for North Carolina, because North Carolina is a basketball school that is having a good football team. I think this win will actually solidify. I've used that word a lot today, and I think I'm using it completely wrong. But
Solidify.
There we go. I knew I said it wrong that time. Solidified. But we'll put their name as a football school as well this year, if they can win this and get that high bowl.
For sure, it's hard to pick against Miami. I love the offense, defense. You got athletes all over the field, whether it's from D-line all the way back to the secondary. For me, it's whose defense decides to show up today.
Yeah.
Because if North Carolina has a defense with Chase Surratt and everyone's flying around, great game, then yeah, they'll beat Miami. But vice versa, if Miami's defense comes out aggressive, can make Sam Howell turn it over early a couple times, I expect it to get out of hand.
It'll be what defense makes a turnover.
Basically.
Yeah. What QB makes a mistake?
Yep.
And I'm picking De'Aaron King to make that mistake before Sam Howell. That's all.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong.
It's the U, boys. It's the U.
Looking at another lopsided game, SEC matchup, UF, LSU. It's in the swamp. 23.5-point favorites. Does LSU save face today at all?
I think that LSU team is lost, and they're going to have to do some serious work in the offseason just get the attitude back. People opting out. There seems to be a lot of off-the-field drama around the program. To even give them a chance, if they were playing well and losing games, I would maybe give them a better chance of getting an upset here or keeping the game close. But they aren't even playing good. I mean, their best game so far has been a close one with Missouri, who, I mean, as we talked earlier, is just overrated and hasn't really been doing much. And it seems like LSU doesn't want to play football. Because you could talk about the drop-off in talent, but they're recruiting 4- and 5-star guys. I mean, that they have a roster full of 4- and 5-star recruits, and they aren't getting it done. It doesn't seem like they want to play. It was kind of like watching them is kind of watching that Steelers-Ravens team after they had all the delays and pushbacks and rescheduling. Neither team wanted to be on that field, and it's kind of the same way. It seems the same way every time LSU goes on the field. They don't really want to be there. They're going through the motions. They're looking at next year already.
Sure. What I'm most worried about in this situation, if Florida is not looking ahead to Alabama. LSU has underperformed big time this year. Florida thinks this could be a walk in the park. And if they were to sleep on this game, I could see LSU making an upset. Do I think it'll happen? No. But I could just see if Florida were to fall asleep on this game and not pay attention to their today rival instead of looking to Bama. But I still think Florida just puts a spanking on them.
From what I've seen from Florida all year, I would expect everything that we just said. I expect them to handle business. I've seen LSU show me that they don't show up in games, whether it's big games, small games, it doesn't matter. But for some strange reason, a 23.5-point favorite at home in the swamp. We've got COVID going around down here. I think LSU beats the spread. I'm not picking LSU to win the game.
Okay, the spread.
Let's get that understood.
You said beat. I'm like, whoa.
Don't get it twisted here. We're talking the spread.
Okay.
Beat the spread, but Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes, everyone on that offense, they're eventually going to get rolling. And Derek Stingley Jr. can't cover all of those people at once. So although he's a great NFL-ready corner himself, you've got NFL talent, as I said, all across the board. Ultimately, say it all season, but Florida's been the best team in the state of Florida, and I expect them to continue it today.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with your point, but just to play devil's advocate, I really think Florida is going to come into this game with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, they aren't going to be looking past this game. I mean, if you're Florida, you have to be somewhat upset that nobody is giving you a chance to get into the playoffs past Alabama and feel like you got something to prove. So I don't really see them looking past any game. And it's going to kind of depend on what the coach does, but I could see them coming out, jamming that gas pedal to the floor, going all out, and not slowing down until after they're done taking their post-game showers. Just going all out, trying to prove something.
Understandable. And I think the other thing to take into consideration is not only that, they're competing with Texas A&M, who is ranked 5th in the nation right now. So they still hold that tiebreaker technically, but at the end of the day, if Florida can beat Bama, that won't matter at all. The voters are going to put Florida in 10 times out of 10 if you get that win over Bama.
The SEC championship game is a play-in game for the college football playoff. The winner is in.
Now, I'm like, with you just saying that, I have to ask this question. Is there a way we end up with the playoffs with at least 2 representatives from the same conference this year?
Yes.
Yeah, I did I don't know if you guys read it or not. I put an article out about the CFP, the college football playoff scenarios, and what could happen, and how I think. I want to make this clear because I did it at the beginning of the article for anybody looking at that goes and reads it. It's on unwrappedsports.com. But I approach that article from what I think the playoff committee is going to do, not necessarily what I think should happen. But if Florida and Clemson win, it's going to be really hard for the committee to leave Notre Dame and Alabama out of the playoff. Because you're basically going to have 6 teams out of the top that are currently in the top 10 with 1 loss coming into that game. And especially if Northwestern beats Ohio State and Florida wins and Clemson wins, it's going to be a mess. And if Florida beats Alabama, then Florida and Alabama are in, regardless of anything else, because they are not going to leave Alabama out of the playoff, right or wrong.
But what about Texas A&M though? Like if Florida wins and Texas A&M doesn't lose, do they make that jump over Texas A&M? I mean, yes, they beat the number 1 team, so you have to give them some respect with that. But if Texas A&M doesn't lose, how do you keep them out of it?
The fact that they lost by 30 points to Alabama. The only way A&M gets in is if Bama wins and Notre Dame wins. So Florida's out with 2 losses. Clemson's out with 2 losses. Ohio State loses. If Northwestern upsets Ohio State, then the Big Ten's out. They don't have a playoff team. And I think and then Oklahoma would have to beat Iowa State. And Cincinnati would have to lose. Because I think an undefeated Cincinnati gets in ahead of Texas A&M. I just looking at how the playoff committee has the top 10 right now. I think Iowa State's being underappreciated from the media standpoint. I think Iowa State has a real chance of making the playoff as long as they beat Oklahoma again.
With 2 losses?
I think a Big 12 championship with wins against Texas and Oklahoma twice will put them ahead of Texas A&M. It is. Oklahoma's out of it. They're outside of the top 10 in the current rankings. So if Oklahoma wins, the Big 12's out. If Northwestern wins, the Big 10's out. And that opens up some very real possibilities. But I think Ohio State's going to win that game, so they get a spot. The winner of Alabama-Florida gets a spot, and the winner of Clemson-Notre Dame gets a spot. Where it gets tricky is if either Florida or Clemson wins, because then you have either a 1-loss Alabama or a 1-loss Notre Dame looking in, and it's from the committee standpoint. I think it's going to be hard to jump. If Clemson wins, I'd almost think that Notre Dame is out, just depending what happens behind them.
I feel like it would really depend on what happens in that Clemson Notre Dame game, because if it's as close as it was the first time, goes to overtime, 40-47, I think at that point you're looking at 2 ACC teams to be in the college football playoffs at that time, because I don't see how they'll drop Notre Dame that far.
Yeah, if Clemson beats Notre Dame in a close game, then Notre Dame has a really strong case, especially if Alabama wins, because if Alabama wins, Florida's out. And if Ohio State wins and then Clemson wins in a close game, you're probably looking at Bama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Notre Dame for Notre Dame-Clemson round 3.
Damn.
But if Notre Dame wins, Clemson's out. I don't care how close it is. If Clemson loses to Notre Dame twice, they're out. And I think that opens the door for Iowa State to get that 4th seed, assuming they would beat Oklahoma.
So, do we see any route for Texas A&M is my only question.
I think Iowa State would have to lose.
Okay.
Because Iowa State's sitting there at number 7 right now, and I think if they win, that's enough for them to jump Texas A&M. as long as they beat Oklahoma again. But if they don't, Oklahoma's at number 11. Even if they beat Iowa State, they aren't going to jump into the top 4. So if Iowa State loses and then Notre Dame and Alabama win, I could see Texas A&M getting the 4th spot over Cincinnati. But that's going to be a coin flip. Or if Ohio State loses, then I think if Ohio State and Iowa State lose, then Texas A&M is looking at a really strong case for the 3 seed, depending on what happens in Clemson, Notre Dame. I think the most frustrating part for Texas A&M is it's completely outside of their control.
Right.
I mean, all they got to do is go in and beat a struggling Tennessee team, which you can pretty much guarantee they're going to do. And even if they do that, I still think in most scenarios they're going to end up sitting in somewhere in that 5 to 7 spot and on the outside looking in.
Where's the love for Coastal Carolina? Come on, man.
Do you want me to talk what I think, or do you want me to talk what the committee's thinking? Because I've just been looking at it from just the way the committee has everybody ranked, what I think they're going to do. Personally, I think Coastal Carolina should be top 10.
I do too.
The win against BYU, they beat number 18 and number 19. They beat number 18 BYU. I can't remember who was 19 when they beat them, but they went on the road and beat them. And you want to make the argument they beat a ULL team that went into Ames and beat Iowa State by 17. Me personally, I think Coastal Carolina should be right up there. As far as like the 7, 8, 9 goes, almost be like Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati, then Iowa State. I think would be a more fair ranking than having Iowa State at 7 and Cincinnati at 8 and then Carolina outside of the top 10. But looking at how the committee has them ranked, I think Iowa State has the best chance to make that jump. I mean, they're going to need some help, but I think Iowa State has the best chance to make the jump as far as who's on the outside looking in right now. Because, I mean, Florida's right there too, but when they lose to Alabama, because I think we can all agree that's most likely going to happen. I think that drops.
No arguments over here.
Yeah, I think that drops them down to like 7 or 8. And they're still going to be up there, but not anywhere near the top 4. And
do we think Clemson wins?
I don't. I think Notre Dame wins.
Really? Even with Lawrence back?
Trevor Lawrence's backup, I can't remember his name right now, but threw for 450 fucking yards against Notre Dame. I mean, and 5 touchdowns. The reason that Notre Dame beat Clemson is not because Trevor Lawrence wasn't playing. It was because their Clemson's defense couldn't stop Notre Dame.
Exactly. Their run game is terrifying.
Yeah, and about the only thing I get sick of hearing the Trevor Lawrence on the field because his backup came in and played for another 3 years after Lawrence leaves. I mean, at least,
ESPN was cutting you.
Yeah, but the only thing with Clemson is that Trevor Lawrence is a 3rd-year starter. He does bring a level of experience and leadership and inspiration to the rest of the team onto the field that could make a difference. I don't like people talking about Trevor Lawrence being such a good quarterback he could change the game because I mean, is another 20, if he throws for 475 instead of 450, does Clemson win that Notre Dame game? No. Like another 25 yards passing is not going to make the difference.
Right.
So I don't see Trevor Lawrence being the real difference maker that everybody seems to think he's going to be the second time around.
Well, I'm going to be a hater on my top 4 and just go ahead and throw that out there. I don't think OSU deserves to be in there at all. Yes, they're undefeated, but they've only got, I think they've played 5 games as of right now. They're going to be playing 6 or 7 games. That's it. When the other teams are like 10, 11, or 12 games. I think it's an unfair assessment, I guess, to give them a higher ranking. I just don't think it's fair to everyone else. Again, I'm a hater. I've never really liked OSU. I feel like they're always overranked year in, year out. So that's a little bit of my hater juice coming out. I feel like they shouldn't even be in there. I think it should be Notre Dame, Clemson, Alabama, and another SEC. I think it could be an ACC, SEC teams for both spots. That's just me. That's my bias too.
You're not wrong on the Ohio State deal, but I guarantee you that Ohio State is not playing in the Big Ten championship game. They do not change the rules unless Kevin Warren was on the phone with the playoff committee behind closed doors getting told that if Ohio State wins the championship game, they're in the playoff.
Mhm.
That's the only way it happens.
Right.
And you look at where
Well,
the
watch
playoff
out, though.
committee, the playoff committee, I mean, they beat OK Indiana team by 7 points. And that's the only real competition they played all year. And the committee still has them at they're at number 3 right now, correct?
I think so.
Yeah,
3
I
or
mean,
4, yeah.
but yeah, the committee has them in the top 4. And as long as they win the championship game, the committee's not going to drop them out of the top 4. But on a personal side, I agree with you. Ohio State shouldn't even be looking at the playoff right now.
No.
And all fairness, I am biased too. I hate Ohio State.
Of course.
But
I'm like, I think we all agree here. I feel the same way. Ohio State should not be looking at a playoff spot in any way, shape, or form. Not to take anything away from those kids, but you're taking away from kids who've been putting in the work since August and July. So that's just how I feel.
I mean, you look at this season alone. Coastal Carolina has a better resume than Ohio State does right now.
Yep.
And even if they win the Big Ten championship, Coastal Carolina still has more quality wins than Ohio State does, and Ohio State's going to get in if they win.
Yeah, they bring a crowd. Let's just be honest. But yeah, I think it's crazy that Ohio State is still ranked 4th on ESPN right now. And it is what it is. I mean, a few years back, Bama had 2 losses and still made it into the playoffs when they probably shouldn't. But it's Bama and it's OSU, so they have to have that respect automatically. I just, as a fan, don't think it should be there.
No, well, and you look at, we were talking about whether or not COVID has hurt anybody. I would say that COVID has ended up helping Ohio State because they haven't had to play anybody to get exposed. And you look at either 2 or 3 years ago, Ohio State was the preseason pick to win it all, and they rolled into Kinnick Stadium. Iowa bias again, but they rolled into Kinnick Stadium and got beat 58-17.
Yeah.
And Ohio State just tends to do that at least once a year against somebody that they aren't supposed to beat. They just show up and shit the bed, and they haven't really even had a team that could do that, let alone, I mean, with only 6 wins, and I don't think Northwestern is the team to beat them. Northwestern got exposed last week. I can't remember who they lost to. Oh, when they lost to Michigan State last week. So I don't think Northwestern is going to be the team to do it, and Ohio State's going to win by a touchdown or more, and they're going to get a spot in the playoff, even though they shouldn't.
Well, from an SEC line, how wonderful would it be if Notre Dame beat Clemson? Clemson's out. OSU doesn't deserve it. And Alabama loses to Florida. You'd have Florida, Alabama, and Texas A&M, all 3 representing, in my eye. That's what I would like. I know I hear you saying Iowa State deserves it. But that would be amazing to have 3 SEC teams in the playoff 4. I could see it happening too, but I don't think Florida can upset Alabama. All 3 of us more or less agree that Notre Dame should beat Clemson again. So
you might dislike this take, but I don't care how much the playoff committee sucks the SEC's dick. They are not going to put 3 SEC teams in.
I agree.
They are not going to put 2 teams that Alabama beat into the playoff because they might as well just freaking cancel the games and hand Alabama the championship.
Let's be honest, though. Which conference is the best conference?
Won't disagree, of course.
But I'll take my bias hat off, and I will put, in all fairness, I truly believe the SEC and the Big Ten are 1A and 1B. I could spend a half hour digging up facts and convince you that the SEC is the best conference. I could spend a half hour digging up stats to convince you the Big Ten is the best conference. I think it's
minutes proving the SEC, and I don't want to waste any time looking at the Big Ten.
1A and 1B.
What about you, Trill? What do you think?
Honestly, I would, being an ACC fan, it would be the worst thing in my eyes to see 3 SEC teams into the playoffs. And ultimately, I think you're going to, with this year and how everything has went, be prepared for the unexpected. If Iowa State somehow ends up in here, as Garrett has mentioned, or somehow Texas A&M sneaks in, I don't think we're going to get the usual possible 2 SEC teams with how it looks with Florida and Alabama. I think if you do, it could possibly change the whole game. What if Florida blows out Alabama? Now, do you have to throw in Florida and Texas A&M, and Bama's out just because they had one terrible game? And I just feel like at that point you're opening up Pandora's box, and these voters, if they thought it was tough before that Tuesday night when those games got to come out at 7:00, everyone's going to be watching ESPN that night because it's going to be a lot of money riding on that. Whether it's you made this bowl game or you made this, or it's going to be big.
What the fans would love to see is an 8-team playoff and do 2 weeks intermission. You play the first week here, you give a 2-week period, you play your second game, you're done. That way, if there's any COVID going on, and then you can actually have your Coastal Carolina in one of these spots that everyone wants to see as a fan. This is the year to do it. Everyone's changing up everything. You've had the bubble, you've had the crazy playoffs or the season in the MLB. Let's just go ahead and do this one time. Say we want it. Everyone wants the expansion of a playoff anyway. Why not do it now? Say we're going to go from 4 to 8 since the season's been crazy. Then you can have your OSU in there, which I don't want them in there at all, and then see what team really is the best out of this. So just go ahead and do it now. NCAA, watch your show, get some knowledge on this. Do a 2-week interval. So if there is any kind of COVID that goes on, it's a 10 to 14 day leeway that everything should be good. You're still prepping. You're ready to go 2 weeks for between each game. You have your winner.
Yeah, I like 8 teams. I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a graphic circulating around what a 16-team football playoff would currently look like. And I think that's too much. I mean, a little bit of Iowa hate here as much as I hate to do it, but like that graphic had number 16 Iowa playing Alabama in the first round.
Oh,
now, there are years that I think Iowa, Alabama, like Iowa could win 4 out of 10 times. This is not one of those years. Like that you might as well just leave the teams home and give Alabama the 14-point win.
Right.
Because Iowa's quarterback play has been too inconsistent this year. Their defense is great. Their whole line is great, but Alabama would just flat out outscore them and make them throw the ball. And I mean, that's not a game. And you don't want to see something like that. But you go to an 8-team, and even if you leave, I mean, Coastal Carolina, I think, should be in there. But you look at the top 8 right now, I mean, you got Alabama playing Cincinnati in the first round. I like that game. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be a fun game to watch. Mm-hmm. And then you got Notre Dame at number 2. They'd be playing Iowa State. I would like to watch that game. Mm-hmm. Iowa State's, providing they win the championship, they're going to be riding a 6-game win streak into the postseason. They stumbled early on, but they've been good. I would love to watch an Iowa State Notre Dame game. And even 4 versus 5, you have Clemson sitting at number 4 and Texas A&M at number 5. I mean, raise your hand if you want to watch that game. This guy.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I really like the 8-game layout, and I think they need to go to an 8-game because there's just way too much uncertainty with the 4-team playoff. And with a 4-team playoff, I don't care how you do it, you're going to leave somebody out that should have the opportunity to play for it. This year, I think it's going to be Texas A&M.
That's what I was about to say.
Then I like how you say if Florida beats Alabama, we're going to get 3 SEC teams. The only way A&M gets in, like even has an opportunity, is if Alabama beats Florida.
Oh, yeah. That way Florida goes on away. I agree.
You got to take – because if Florida beats Alabama, Texas A&M is going to drop to like 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. They aren't even going to sniff it. But
right. Well, that was with me taking out Ohio State completely because I don't think they deserve there, and saying Clemson were to beat – or Notre Dame beat Clemson, which I think that would give them 2 losses and they would move up. But, yeah, I don't think Texas A&M has a shot of getting in. That's just my SEC blood trying to make it happen.
Yeah, well, and that's the outside looking in and why they should go to 8 games because A&M outside of the early – and it was earlier in the season, and that's what's going to kill them with a 4-game playoff is that they have a 30-point loss to Alabama.
Right.
I mean, when they already played and they lost by 30, how is the committee going to look at that and be like, well, Alabama Texas A&M rematch would be a good first-round game?
Right.
Yeah, so – I don't see Texas A&M getting in, and they should have the opportunity to play. But to give them that, you got to go to 8 teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's covered all of our topics for today. Like we even got into college football previews with the playoff as well. I'm like Mike Garrett. Let the people know where they can find you at.
Go ahead, Garrett.
All right. We're both staring at each other. You can find me on Twitter and Sportscaster at Garrett from Iowa. I got my name on the screen there for spelling. Check out the People's XFL show. We run that every Wednesday night, 8 Central, 9 Eastern, tackling pretty much everything football, not NFL. So great show. Me and my co-host Midnight Moose really enjoy putting it on, and we're getting some interviews lined up. So.
And as you can see, my name's Michael Lawson. MD Lawson 000 is my Twitter. Also, Unwrapped Sports Network has their sportscaster where we are all with the USN on the end of our names. That way you can find all of us. Go check us out. All of our content on there as well. We now have a YouTube channel, so get on YouTube as well and check it out. But I have a Backstop Banter show where it's everything MLB, free agencies going on right now. Co-host with Connie Chats on Twitter as well. We do that every Thursday around 10 p.m. Eastern. We may be able to tinker with that and come a little bit earlier here soon. But that's about it for B. Sounds good there.
All right. And as always, I'm here every Saturday morning and Sunday afternoons, NBF_podcast. That's why I've got NBF_trill. Nothing but facts is what it stands for. And yeah, we cover everything from baseball, basketball, anything that's really going on in sports that's popular, we're going to cover it. And yeah, we're here every weekend and we're going to keep it coming back with you guys. Signing off from myself and the Unwrapped family. Have a great weekend and enjoy some football today.